Hello and welcome to Zero Gravity Live, our very first run of our brand new live stream coming at you every week, every Tuesday. Nice, we get the fireworks on that. Coming every Tuesday on YouTube, X, and soon LinkedIn Live. Since this is our first show, and maybe not everyone knows who we are. Firstly, welcome to our audience. We want all of the participation from you. So please, in your chat, let us know where you're coming from. We want to know who you are, where you're coming from, and welcome. And while you type that in, let's do a little round of introductions. What do you say, guys?
Sounds good. So I'm super excited to be here, Anthony and Sterling. I feel like this show is really going to take off and get some traction because we're doing it weekly. So that's another big thing. If you're watching, for the first time, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all the YouTube things so you get notified when we go live because these will be coming at you every week. And, Anthony, I know when we get into this, people will kind of understand it's not, smash mouth, object first immutability from start to finish, right? We want this to be a community. We're going to talk about tech topics, some non-tech topics, and how that essentially, ties back to a key moral, right? A key takeaway. So I'm super excited. Love that format. And I do feel like it's going to be something unique and different. So be sure to continue hanging out with us week after week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sterling Wilson here. Can't wait to get to know all of you on these shows. And what really excites me the most, Anthony and Matt, is exactly that. This is going to be a different format. We're all industry professionals. We're all thought leaders in our own way. We all carry our passions outside of work. So how does what we know outside of work, our passions outside of work, also talk to us about what we see inside of our industry. And I'm just excited about covering a lot of these with you.
I love it. And we call it Zero Gravity because we're aiming for that weightless, frictionless kind of show that is a little bit different than your normal corporate live stream. So we're glad to have you all here. I already see some chat in the comments. We got someone from Tempe, Arizona. We were just there last week. Nice. All three of us hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good old. Is it Tempe or Tempe? I don't know how to say it.
Tempe. I say Tempe.
Okay.
Tempe. I had to throw this one up too. Randy, what's up, Randy? Props to Aaliyah for sending you over here. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. And hopefully as more of you come in, let us know where you're coming from. We're going to give you that shout out. And welcome to the show. So speaking of shout outs, Matt, what's going on this week? I know you brought something to share with the class. Like what's
good? So I've got to throw this up. So I don't know if you guys have seen the Apple Vision Pro. So if anybody knows anything about me, and I can probably speak for Anthony as well, we're huge Apple fanboys here. And we bought into the ecosystem, got the watch, got the iPhone, got the MacBook. I've got the MacBook Pro and the Studio. So I'm a huge Apple guy. And it's funny, when I saw the keynote of this, when Tim Cook first talked about it, literally when he said the price, everybody in the audience, there was a big gasp. Like everybody's like, oh, $3,400. Like, what on earth? And another fun fact that I didn't realize about this, and see if you guys can, think back in your memory on this. And I was talking to you about it earlier, Anthony. This is the very first product that Apple has released where, the keynote speaker, whether it was Jobs or Cook, didn't actually use it on stage. Like he didn't actually come out with the Vision Pro and do the thing, right? You think back about all the famous keynotes, the iPod, the iPad, the iPhone, the MacBooks. I mean, heck, even Apple TV, they would have that showcasing what it looked like on stage. This is the only time the actual keynote guy didn't use that. And, I just think it's really cool to see where we're going with AR. And, I don't know if I'm going to be an adopter for Gen 1 because, again, I know there's going to be bugs, they've got to work out. But, again, Anthony and I were talking. I love your take on it too, Sterling and Anthony. But my use case for this that I could see, will I spend $3,500? Of course not. But if it were free, if I were a beta tester, where I think this would be really, really cool is for an airplane. And also if you wanted to take your office, like if you had a MacBook Pro as an example, and let's say you wanted to go sit out on the porch or the balcony and, enjoy the fresh air, you wouldn't be constrained to just that single screen. You could put this on, and now, even though it's, one screen. And Anthony, you could talk about this, I'm sure, but you could have a lot more real estate from a desktop perspective.
Mhm.
You could do some video editing. You've got your email, Teams, and when you just think about productivity, I think it would help there. But at $3,400, I'll just keep myself in my office where I have my monitor set
Wait
up.
for Gen 2 when that price
Right?
comes down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I've
Oh.
got the budget version right here, so these seem to work pretty well.
Now that's some augmented reality I could buy into. I mean, all of this kind of feels a little bit Black Mirror, does it not? I mean, I've kind of seen this, in written in a couple of places, and kind of seems to myself where here we go, the tech dystopia. We're all walking around with these big old, monocles, wondering
Yep.
where things are going. From one side of it, Matt, I absolutely agree with you. I think that from a road warrior like myself, being on planes, the additional space, being able to look at in privacy certain documents that I may not want other people to see that I'm typing up that may have some NDA type information on it. I could really, really see it being great. Huge videos of movies to kind of look at, being able to have multiple windows open. But man, I don't know about sitting on the subway with people staring at me, and if I have these ski goggles on, and I mean, I'm not exactly sure. And what is this that I read about somebody driving their Tesla with the goggles on? Did you guys read that?
Yeah. So
Gee
this is
whiz.
my big problem with it, right? Like if you look into the device, it is a powerful piece of equipment and
Yeah.
hardware. The pass-through is not glass. So the eyes you can see on the screen here, those are digitally reconstructed. That's
Yes.
not your actual eyes. And this is my
Weird.
biggest issue with the whole thing. Augmented reality should be a hybrid of real life and digital. And these are a glorified virtual reality headset with cameras, really good cameras that are compositing the image. So you give like I think it's 12 milliseconds of latency, which is really good.
Yeah.
But if you ask any Counter-Strike player on planet Earth, hey, is 12 milliseconds of latency enough? No, it's not. You got to go faster. And I would not drive a car with 12 milliseconds of latency between me, the wheel, and the road.
Solid point.
Right.
It's cool, but I don't think it's there yet. It's like you said,
Yeah.
Sterling. V2, V3, I think if they actually get to a point where it's glass and I can black out the glass and I can go, on the moon and do my job or whatever, and then I can take it off and see through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little more sold on the concept, but it
Yeah.
also, as an everyday VR user, these headsets are heavy and they leave
Oof.
marks on your face and they wear out your eyes. I would not be wearing this for hours on end doing my job. It's got to
No.
get lighter and it's got to get lower profile.
As a glasses wearer, I mean, I love the idea that maybe I could just put something on. I'm in sort of that augmented reality. I don't have to put in my contacts or something first. But guys, what do you think this is going to do to our human interaction? I mean, now to your point, I mean, Anthony talked about the idea that those are not her real eyes on the screen there. And we'd
Correct.
love to hear from everybody in the audience too. What do you think? How is this going to, I mean, it's another layer. It's a layer of obfuscation between us and the human contact, right?
I mean, check this out. This is a shout out to Marquez who does awesome tech reviews. But it's like, look at the ad versus reality, right? They had a cool vision. It just didn't quite make it, I think, in Gen 1. So,
Yeah.
and you're right, Sterling. Everybody's already looking down at their phone. So what's this
Yeah.
going to do?
Oof.
It's strange because, like you said, Matt, we're Apple fans and Apple has a track record of kind of being late to the game in a lot of things when it comes to their products. Any Android user will gladly tell you, oh, my phone has done this for 4 years. Glad you guys finally caught up. But it's because Apple does this whole, we don't put it out until we know it works. We know it's ready. We know, it's going to work perfectly on our device. And they're a little bit safe, conservative when it comes to new technology and hardware. And this product feels the exact opposite of Apple and their design methodology in every regard. So props to them for being so willing to put out a beta for, all intents and purposes into the field. But wow, what a difference in how they usually operate.
Exactly. Hey, one last question for you guys. What is the barrier for you all and the audience too? What is the barrier of adoption right now? What is keeping you, Matt? I know you love the latest tech, man. If there's anybody out there that always has it, it's you. What is that barrier of adoption right now for you?
Yeah, I think all the points we've made, back when Google released Google Glass, that was way more, I would say, almost there as far as usability, where you could just wear it out and about. and people didn't look at you like you had a ski mask on.
Yeah.
I think the whole promise of AR is when you can wear something that doesn't distract, back to your point, Sterling, from interaction. Like if you could literally wear a pair of normal glasses
Yeah.
that actually look like normal glasses, and it would give you point in time context and additional insights in your live environment. And you've seen some of these, I guess, concepts and ideas in play when you're walking out on the
Yeah.
street and you got your glasses on, you look to the right, and let's say there's a pizzeria shop, and it gives you all the details, the reviews, like that stuff I think could be useful, downstream. But when you think about battery life, how is it going to do that in real time, based on GPS tracking? And I mean, we're a ways away, and I think something like this is really cool. And certainly I think they're going to innovate on it and hopefully make it smaller where you don't have to wear a battery bank, attached with a cord everywhere you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
So I think just this device to me is something that you would put in your travel bag, at least
Yeah.
for myself. In
Yeah.
the airplane, number one use case where I could see this being used. You could sit on an airplane, do whatever you want to do, watch a movie, and like you said, confidentiality, that's actually a cool part of it, because
Yeah.
nobody can see what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say on this that really did impress me during that review that Marquez did is you can actually put yourself in a different location, or you can look at your real environment. So in other words, you could see your actual office with the front facing cameras and, be in your actual office, or you could go to the moon and you could literally be on the moon with your email and your Word docs. And, when you think about it that way,
That's pretty cool.
could probably relax you and maybe be more productive if you were kind of checked into that space for a while. But like Anthony said, the weight, like I said, the crazy insane price.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm perfectly fine with my
Yeah.
surroundings as they are.
Yeah, shout outs to Martin Quick in the chat who said 35,000. The barrier alone is enough. Let's get yeah, that's a huge barrier.
That's
But like,
huge.
for me, what it's going to come down to is right now you can do one monitor on the device when it's plugged into your Mac. And
That's a good point.
I see it as a great substitute for an at-home desktop workspace.
Yeah.
If I can plug it into my MacBook and I can get, 27 monitors everywhere I look around. I mean, we've 27x my productivity, because now I'm not constantly switching tabs. I'm not having to create unique desktop layouts. If I'm just looking and interacting with things I'm looking at, that is a sales point for me. But the fact that we can only do one right now, that's just a no-go.
I totally get that. So you all are saying these are going to end up, the growth of it, the maturity of the product, it's going to be a different use case than you think the sort of meta AR classes, the way they're trying to tackle it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. With Meta, it was all about how do we bring sort of VR into the workplace? How do we create connectivity outside of the physical office, which is a little ironic given their return to office policies.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. This, I think, is far more personal, right? Like the vision is far more about the individual user being able to take the things that are in their pocket, on their laptops, and their headphones, and present them in a new interactable way. And I think this will be a success long term, but only the wealthiest early adopters are going to have fun with this thing today.
Totally get it. Well, I'm tuned in. I mean, for me, that barrier, I have to say, is that 3,500. Martin hit it. He hit it right on there. It needs to come down some. I'm thinking, it needs to come down to almost 30% of that price before we see widespread adoption. So
completely agree.
Yep.
Hey, before we get into our next topic, shout outs to, I'm probably going to butcher your name, so I'm sorry. Kirill Kozlov coming in from Yerevan, Armenia. That's awesome. Outside of where we reside. We love to see it. So let us know if you're joining in, where are you coming in from, and we'll give you that shout out. So Sterling, what have you got for us this week? Share with the class.
I just have a little bit of a chat topic. This topic has been around for a while. We've kind of thought about it for a while. It's been long believed that our phones are listening to us. It's been long believed that, we have a conversation. I talked to Matt about the Vision Pro glasses, and I look and there's an ad for the Vision Pro. I talked to you about where do I get the best version of Anthony's favorite drink, which is coffee, tea, milk, boba. Did I say that right?
You got all the words right. It's the order that's a little we got to work on. It's a coffee milk tea with boba, but hey, you got it, Sterling.
Got it, right? So we have a couple of conversations about this, and I'm getting ads for a bunch of different teas and things like that. So is this true? Is this true? Well, it turns out that myth has been busted. So where did it really come from? Back in 2016, I believe it was Washington Post ran an ad of how all of a sudden Facebook came out with 96 different data points to collect data about, who we are and the things going on. And so that really started the idea that Facebook was now listening to you and was going to take that information to do more targeted and relevant ads. Well, through that time, we were all kind of wondering whether our phones were listened to. And believe it or not, back in 2018, this was proven incorrect. They did, I think, over 17,000 apps. They did different data points. They looked at different things. And the conclusion was your phone is not, in fact, listening to you. But you know what? I still get all of these hyper-targeted ads. It is now several more years on. We have new technology. I have to ask you, gentlemen, with our data, are our phones listening to us?
I'm going to share a personal story. This literally just happened 2 days ago. It's kind of, I'm going to put my mom on blast. So I told my mom about some new techno thing a few weeks back. And she told me this weekend, she's like, I think my phone's listening because now I'm getting ads for that techno thing you told me about.
Yep.
I'm like, well, Mom, I don't want to be reductive or make you, sound unintelligent, but I told her exactly what you just said, Sterling. I was like, Facebook's done this whole thing. There's like 96 data points that comprise a human being, and we can just really easily predict your patterns and decision making. And it's kind of sad. You realize your autonomy is not what you think it is, but we're creatures of habit. And she's like, wow, that's super depressing. And then my brother, after my mom left, leaned over and she's like, I literally saw Mom Googling what you were telling her about, like when she got home, and she's just forgotten that she did that. And I'm like, well, that also, makes sense. And I think
that'll do it.
Both can be true, right? Like we are creatures of habit. We can be predicted, but also we react super spontaneously to data that we get. We hear something, we Google it, and it's almost become second nature. And I think a lot of times we forget that we search for things or input things in our browser or, put them in a chat somewhere. And then we assume the phone's listening, but actually it's like, no, we just forgot that we did the thing that literally creates the data in the first place.
That's a great story.
So
it makes sense.
So I guess for me, maybe I'm on an island because I still 100% think that has not been debunked. I'll give you an example. Like I don't do anything with woodworking. I have once like 6 years ago, but that's not my day job. Clearly, that's not what I do on the weekends. And, I was sitting around with some guys and we were all chatting. And one of the guys in our neighborhood he does do a lot of woodworking in his basement. It's got a full shop and everything. He was telling me all about this stuff and never even pulled out my phone. Didn't Google anything. This was just a chat. All of a sudden, a couple days later, I start getting these ads on Facebook for woodworking.
No.
And I'm like, I know I didn't Google it.
That you
and
didn't
nobody touched my phone, whatever. So I'm still, I don't know. I'm still a little bit, thinking that there's still some loopholes, maybe with different apps. Maybe it's not Facebook. Maybe they're getting it from other places. But, the larger question that I would almost ask is clearly we don't want people listening to, all of our private secrets and conversations.
Right.
That's like a different level of security.
Right.
But when you look at targeted ads, are they really so bad? Because I would rather get targeted ads than like ads for women's clothing that do me no good, right? So at least they're going to be targeting me with tech I might buy, which is bad for the wallet, but at least it's something it interests me. Jeep stuff, all the stuff that I do on the side. I would rather see that than something completely unrelated to what I would ever, click on. So
that's a good point.
It's kind of a give and take type thing, but there's certainly the security element where I don't want people listening to the microphone. That's, my private area, my private space type stuff. So who knows?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
They have to listen, right? Like in order to get your phone to perk up or Martin mentioned Alexa, which I hope I didn't trigger by saying that out loud.
Yeah.
You have to say it, and they are always listening. So there is truth. Like they are always listening for their keywords. But I'm gonna be optimistic and think that the data that they're listening for and recording, which is probably just a ton of data, is only for those trigger words. And I'm going to live in my little bubble and believe that to be true. Because if I don't, then I'm going to be in a paranoid fit. And we don't want that. That's never
got
good.
room for me in that bubble. I'm in there too, man. I mean, listen, part of me, I dig what Matt's saying. It's like impossible not to think that in somewhere we didn't click on some app that gave it access to the microphone whenever it wants it. I know I get that part. The engineer in me says, come on, dude, we know it. But at the same time, I think part of me wants to be in that bubble with Anthony. And the other side is sort of like, in 2024, I hate to say it this way, but resistance is sort of futile. We live in this world where, to Anthony's point, maybe we're not as autonomous as we think. We're very sort of regimented beings in that way. And you know what? If you're gonna target me with stuff, if it is gonna be, I would rather get relevant things. There is something in me that sometimes wishes I could ask for it first before it's given to me. But at that same time, I mean, I just think we're in for a ride here.
So last thing I'll say on this, and I know we gotta jump to your topic, Anthony, but has anybody actually read in detail all the different access that you're granting some of these apps? Because we're so quick to say you install an app, open it for the first time. Yeah, I know you got to give it this access and click it, click it, click it. Have you ever actually looked at what you're granting these apps access to? It's a little disturbing on some of them.
Yeah.
In a previous life, I did a research report with a team of lawyers on all of the cloud service providers' EULAs. So we looked at Amazon, Google, and Microsoft Azure. Yeah. And the information we found just by having legalists page through 60-something pages for each vendor, and what you get, what you give, what you don't get, was super enlightening. So much to the fact that we're like, can we even publish? I know it's public, but can we publish these findings? Because I feel like it's out there, but they don't want you to know. And now I just live in a world where I'm just hesitant to read the EULA because I probably don't want to know.
Probably don't want to know.
I mean, we can all do an experiment, right? Just when you get off the call and you got your phone just sitting there, just say some random thing that you've never Googled, and just wait a few days and see if you don't start getting ads. That's one way to prove it wrong.
That's the homework before next week's show. Right. Everyone, including our listeners, please say a random string of words that you can think of right now, potentially products you could buy, and see if you get fed that information.
Yeah. And leave it in the comments on the video so we'll see what comes up.
Please do. All right. Well, final topic of the week. This one kind of, I saw this and I laughed, but then I realized we probably should talk about this. Guess what's coming to Windows Server 11? You see this?
Oh,
I did.
Microsoft is bringing the Linux sudo command to Windows Server. So this article came from Bleeping Computer. I love this website because it always keeps me on the edge of tech and what's going on. But look at this. Linux sudo right there in your Windows Server, which is awesome because, I, for one, vastly prefer the Linux syntax to both PowerShell and command line. I know with PowerShell, they brought in a lot of the syntax and you can do a lot of things that work, but I think it's pretty cool that they're sort of standardizing on the language that's very familiar for a lot of people. But on the other end, sudo is a powerful utility. And we talk a lot about this here at Object First, the importance of, limiting access and not giving sudo permissions to everybody, especially with concepts like zero trust and zero trust data resilience. But Windows, hate to say, a little less secure than Linux just by default. And now we're giving keys of the kingdom with a new command. So what's y'all's immediate reaction to this?
I'm 100% in your boat on this one. It's like, let's take what arguably, and you're going to hear people, which I can understand the argument. Windows and Linux, one is not necessarily more vulnerable than the other. It's just more attempts, viruses, ransomware, whatever, are targeting Windows because they know it's more common than Linux. But you're right. Sudo is such an important and critical and highly, to your point, it's like having the keys to the kingdom, full admin rights. So it's like, if there was ever a doubt that Windows is not as secure as Linux. It's like, hold my beer, let's bring this in and just blow the whole thing up. So now we're giving you two ways to potentially infiltrate a Windows server. My knee-jerk reaction is, oh my gosh, can that be removed?
It better be able to be disabled, at least by a
Yeah.
registry key or whatever. Okay, fine. Here we go. Resident Windows and Microsoft fanboy here, and I'm my best buds and teammates are obviously of the other camp. Look, I'll just say this: I know why Microsoft did that. I understand why they had to provide sort of that interoperability to at least continue to proliferate their use in some cases where we're seeing, their cases go down. A lot of the world that we talk about and we live in, what are you doing for data management? How are you securing it? How are you making sure you have the data security? So giving them the ability to apply these things responsibly. You see, I'm choosing my words carefully, gentlemen. Okay, I'm trying not to step into a quagmire here, but I'm understanding why Microsoft is sort of giving us the keys to do that, so that they can continue to be at parity with a lot of these Linux repos and things that are sort of de rigueur. To Matt's point, Windows has always had a larger attack surface. I'm sorry, Microsoft, but it's true. It's just always had a larger attack surface, even in the command line server piece. So you are right there. I do have to concede and agree with that. I do understand why Microsoft has did it. Hell, I was super surprised when Microsoft started providing support for Android apps 7 years ago. So I just think it's sort of a constant morph of the architecture itself.
Yeah. And I put the little ticker at the bottom. I'm really curious to hear what our audience thinks, but not everything is black and white or just good and bad. I think there is something about bringing a common language, bring a little bit more authority and credentials to Windows to allow that power user. Like, that's great. That's awesome. And I'm going to quote the best Spider-Man movie, the first one with Tobey Maguire: with great power comes great responsibility, right?
True.
And we've been talking about it a lot here at Object First with zero trust. Zero trust is great because least privilege access, assume breach, you want to have segmentation, but it wasn't enough for the world of backup and backup storage, right? So we came up and we worked with Veeam and Numberline on zero trust data resilience, which let me just pop this up in the chat here just in case anyone wants to take a look. Take a look at this white paper. This is a sort of overview on how you can make your backups more secure alongside with your backup storage, and to really bring those zero trust principles into the foray when it comes to backup and backup storage. But I bring this up because, in all honesty, as we iterate, this isn't just for Windows, this isn't just for backup, this isn't just for application or DevSecOps, it's for everybody. Like, we all need to bring a little bit more zero trust into our lives, and to think about, hey, I have all this privilege and power now. What does that mean? What does that mean if I get compromised, or if someone comes in and steals my password, I get socially engineered? And what if I trust just a little bit less, that I'm not as secure as I think I am? And that's kind of why we put these concepts out there. And when we talk about these topics, is I want to put a little skepticism and a little paranoia into your life, because I think we need that. I think that's healthy. I think that's how we stop the bad actors. What do y'all think?
I absolutely agree. When we think of the whole idea of zero trust, me thinking about this in the sudo command was sort of like way back in the day when you're creating domain architectures on the Microsoft side and you add a normal user into the domain admins group. I mean, you have to be careful about what you're doing with permissions and with whom those permissions lie. So
Yeah.
I think this really does draw. I think you made a very good point about the idea of, this really draws to the point that we need to understand what our architecture is doing, where the security needs to be, who needs to have access. The very point of zero trust, zero access, always checking at every point, just begs the fact of who should have these kinds of permissions and who shouldn't.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, back to your Spider-Man quote, I think that's what we need to do with everything in IT. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's what we've done, here at Object First, is like, look, we know that the super user, and if you grant that in Linux, you know, nothing's off limits at that point. So why not just disable it before the thing even ships? So,
Mhm.
there you go. So it's a nice turnkey ironclad solution to not even have to worry about it.
Yeah.
right? So everything has already been pre-provisioned. And when you really think about it, I know we've talked in previous shows and previous streams about OOTB and what's in the box. But when you think about comparing that to other storage systems, think about what you have to do. Even with a typical NAS, you have to unbox it. You have to turn it on. You have to set the initial administrator password to get in and access it because it's probably the default. Then you have to provision your RAID set. Then you have to set your stripe size. Then you have to figure out, how to add it. Is it going to be iSCSI? Is it going to be NFS? You got to do all this stuff with full admin rights, period. Right. So it doesn't matter what you do, what you layer on top of it. Someone who configured that initially will hold the keys to the kingdom. And, unfortunately, if that person gets disgruntled, that's a huge security, loophole.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the key strengths what we have when we talk about security. ZTDR, like you said, Anthony, zero trust data resilience, but coming out of the gate with zero access, I mean, that's critical, in today's world, because to some degree, we don't even have to care about the pseudo user in Windows because they're backing that Windows environment up to us, which can't be compromised. So it's a nice tie-in.
It is. And, if you're curious to learn more about what Matt's talking about, scan that QR code, check out our Box to Backup series. If you're looking for new storage for your Veeam environment that meets all of the demands of what we just talked about, and then some more, this is a great way to see what we're offering. But I think that's it for today. I know we're coming up on time, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate all of the comments in the chat. This is our first foray at this, so we're still figuring things out. We're going to get better. But your participation has been fantastic. So thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you, Matt and Sterling, for joining us today and bringing the heat with those topics. Had a good time. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat channel.
See you then.
Take care, guys.